Hey everyone. So, I was doing lessons today in my studio, and a great buddy of mine who we have on the show often texts us all the really sad, unfortunate news that Eddie Van Halen had passed today. And can't really explain it because it's not like Eddie and I were really great friends. But I think because of the massive amounts of influence he had on my life musically, I do feel a great sadness over the loss of Eddie, and as you'll see here shortly, the gentleman who's helping me, one of my greatest friends, Dave Buchanan, it's his all-time favorite player. But as fate would have it, what we ended up doing 2 weeks ago was we filmed a review of the very first Van Halen album. And Justin was going to be on vacation, so I thought, man, this would be a good opportunity for me and Dave to get and just talk some Van Halen. So I thought maybe it would be appropriate in respect and in honor of the great Eddie, who literally was Hendrix 2.0. I mean, he was the next pioneer in the guitar world. So when we decided to release this early, I just said, I'll go downstairs and film a little quick intro, and we'll just put it out early, explaining to everybody that, we'd already recorded this, weren't planning on doing this, but it seemed timely. So I hope you enjoy, and as always, we'll never forget Eddie. His legacy will live on and on forever. So anyways, hope you enjoy.
The Caleb Davis Show.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Caleb Davis Show. With me as always is You're not Justin.
No, I'm not.
Who are you?
I'm trying to look like him, though.
Ladies and gentlemen, Davey Rode back in the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Glad to be back.
Thanks
Thank
for being here.
Yes.
So Justin is on vacation today, and his grueling Caleb Davis Show schedule has driven him to the point where he needs a little break. And if you hear Justin chuckling, it's because we got my man J-Mo on the Zoom here.
What's up?
What's up, man?
Yeah. Hey, you know what I'm gonna do? Just because actually no. Should we leave it? Should we leave him there, or should we put him here so people can see? I don't know how this was going
I
to
feel
work.
weird talking to him if he's... I don't know. Well, we can... Whatever.
We'll just leave you there. We'll just leave you there. Then you could speak up, and that way, if I can't figure out how to get your picture on here with us, then you could just be there in spirit. But hey,
That's right.
thanks for taking time out of your vacation to hang with us.
Absolutely.
What would a show be without you?
Not as good as it is with me.
That's
Yes.
a fact, Jack. You got it.
I can agree.
Well, anyway, so we brought in the all-star Davey Rode here, and to kind of sub for Justin tonight. And here's what we're gonna do tonight. We're gonna review the very first Van Halen album, the very first Van Halen
Van
album,
Halen.
the 1978 classic.
Yes.
Before we get into track-by-track breakdown, let's talk just a little bit about some Van Halen. Justin, this is your most familiar album, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, when did you get a hold of this record?
It was not too long ago. I didn't grow up a big Van Halen guy. I think maybe 5-6 years ago was when I.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I had heard,
Most of the album, right.
and Run Devil and just like stuff that you hear. But that's when I went to the Walmart $5 bin and grabbed a couple
Yes.
Van records and listened to it on the way home from the beach, actually.
Oh, nice.
Probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Excellent.
And it was just it's a very obvious kind of overstated thing with Van Halen, but that guitar tone, man,
Yeah.
that sound.
Yeah.
That's
It
it.
just is so powerful. It washes over you. It's a huge sound.
That's it, dude. Absolutely. You, Davey Rode, you go back.
A little longer.
Do you remember when this came out?
No, I don't. I would have been, with 78, I would have been 4 years old. So
Okay.
Yeah. So my initiation to Van Halen was certainly early 80s, more the 84. I probably heard some stuff before then, but kind of 84 was my introduction to Van Halen and MTV and stuff. But then, I'd heard these songs on the radio.
Yep.
And then I made the connection.
Yeah, I was in high school. I knew, again, I think we all grew up kind of knowing, like Justin said, like we all heard Run with the Devil and Ain't Talking About Love
You Really Got Me,
Jump
yeah.
and You Really Got Me and Eruption, all that. And
Jump's not on there, but yeah.
You're right. But what I'm saying, just Van Halen songs, The Cradle Will Rock,
Cradle Will Rock.
all these songs, like you heard them because they came on the radio all the time. Here we have a local station, 99.7, the Fox, and I think they have about 7 Van Halen songs that just go on rotation.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that I always heard.
Yeah.
But when I was in high school, Jay, you remember when we went to New York City, I went to a Virgin record store and bought this record. And that was my first full pass through Van Halen was in high school. Yeah.
I didn't. So I remember that trip in the record store. I bought Paranoid and Amnesiac, the Radiohead album.
That's awesome.
And yeah, that's cool, man. That's when you kind of first were intentional with Van Halen.
And the other 2 things that I bought were Syd Barrett's solo records.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Madcap Laughs and Barrett. Which, by the way, we should probably review those one day. But sidebar.
Wow.
So let's go ahead and get this out there in the open, because this is the kicker with this whole thing. This is the future when it happened.
Yeah.
This was not a sound that had happened yet.
Yeah.
All right, and it's really important to keep in mind that the future had already happened about 10 years ago
with
Jimmy.
Yeah.
And this record comes out, 10 years after Jimmy came out. Like 11, but whatever. The point is, it wasn't that far removed from the great Jimi Hendrix pioneering movement, where he took rock guitar and then said, "Oh, here's what you think rock guitar can be. Here's what it is now." Mm-hmm. And then, really, I think that torch was passed from Jimmy to Eddie.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, because he was doing, Jimmy came out and did things that nobody else was doing or even thought about doing, and I think Eddie was kind of the same. He was in that same path that Jimmy had made. Like the sound and using the whammy bar and things that guys just weren't doing, like taking it to an extreme.
Yeah. And
I think spot on, and I don't think that this is my thought when I've thought about that Hendrix was the original experimentalist.
Yeah.
Pushed the envelope with the instrument. Eddie Van Halen was definitely part 2 of that same vein. I don't think that there's another one. I think that they did it. In terms of convention, in terms of like the instruments that we have, amps, cables, guitars, until you start recreating the instrument, I think after between Eddie and Jimmy, if you're not talking about chops, you're just talking about exploring style, I don't think you do anything else. I really don't. And I'm usually very open-minded. But I think they did it.
It's valid.
Well, and if you think Eddie he really was using the same kind of equipment that Jimmy was using, a Marshall and a Strat that was hot rodded. He took it to another level, and pedals that weren't really available when Jimmy was alive. But Jimmy was one of the first guys to really start using pedals, and you saw Eddie using those. It wasn't his sound. It was just it was part of his sound, to make an effect. But
and like always, our decorations out here kind of reflect what we're talking about, and that's why I have this Stanley Jordan record out. Now you'd be like, well, what does Stanley Jordan have to do at all with Van Halen? Well, so to Justin's point, now his thing did not catch. Really, because there's guys that do it now, like the Tosin guy, and like there are guys who do the double hand thing, and I think that may have been another pioneered movement, but it just didn't catch on quite like the Hendrix and Van Halen thing. So I do think some guys have tried some new things as far, like you said, as far as just cable to amp, guitar, cable, and amp, not pedal, not any kind of recording techniques, just the actual chops of playing. There have been a couple guys that have tried some new pathways, and it just didn't quite grab on like this did. But yeah, this dude, like heavy metal guitar, and I know Van Halen's not heavy metal, but heavy metal guitar went like this from Van Halen.
Right.
And
I think at the time they probably were considered heavy metal. I mean, if Deep Purple was.
Sure.
Then, and I mean, Van Halen, I think their first big tour was they opened for Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
So, they were kind of lumped into that crowd. Now we look back and go, well, they're not heavy metal, but
If you want context, and you'll really appreciate this, Jay, if you want context, this came out right after Animals.
Oh, okay.
So you just think about like what Pink
Context,
Floyd.
yeah.
You think about what Pink Floyd was doing with Animals, and then Eruption. Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like it's the future, man.
yeah.
Like guys were not doing that, and that's pretty wild. I hear what was it? Was it Gene Simmons that kind of
He did it. Gene Simmons did a demo for them, some like 3-track demo, and they didn't like it. He went on tour. They didn't like the sound of it. They thought, well, we could probably do better than this. And I think, they were playing at one of the clubs in L.A. and Ted Templeton and somebody else saw them from Warner Brothers and were like, yeah. And got them in the studio, and they basically recorded their album in 2 weeks. They tracked, guitar, drums, and did vocals for a week or whatever. So it's Van Halen 1's pretty much a live record. There's a few songs with overdubs on them, but it's they wanted to capture that live feel of what they do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, if there's actually some mess ups on there, if you listen closely, you can. Oh well, mess ups. There's just some blips and things. If you listen, you can catch them.
Oh, I mean, it was essentially a one take shot, right? I mean,
pretty
it was a live band scenario with some overdubs here and there, maybe.
Yeah.
I think you can totally grab onto the energy of that too. I mean, there's something, even though you might not necessarily think of, like, when I think about bands recording live, like, I don't know, Grand Funk Railroad or something, like, just a lot of energy and it's raw, and that's not how I typically would think about Van Halen. But when you listen to this first record, it's those vibes are there.
Yeah, it's there.
It's raw. There's energy. It's a live record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A really good close friend of ours, builder of Splawn amplifiers, Scott Splawn, he's a Van Halen junkie.
Yeah.
And Scott told us a few times actually some really cool tidbits about the recording of that first record. So that's a SM57 on a Marshall cabinet. That's not this is not like massive recording techniques. In fact, all the things that you hear, because there's a pretty thick reverb on that.
It's plate reverb.
It's all post.
Yeah.
That's all done behind a mixing deck. Like, I mean,
I think there's a studio, and I pulled this up last year. I didn't really prepare for this, but there's some kids that are really like little virtuosos in their own right. They got them in the studio that they recorded Van Halen 1, and they had that reverb, that plate reverb chamber room or whatever. And these kids record, and it sounds a lot like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the reverb was all, and I think Eddie hated the reverb.
Yeah, I heard that he didn't want it.
He didn't like it, but it really makes that album it makes it sound bigger. It gives it a little
really
more.
Does.
It makes it space, gives it a little space in there.
But it's interesting to me though to think that with that tone, and that sound that's so famous, we're essentially dealing with an SM57 and a Marshall,
a cranked Marshall, yeah.
And a Frankenstrat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a whole lot going on there.
No. And we'll talk about the Ibanez.
Yeah.
The Ibanez that it was probably the better sounding guitar, but he screwed it up after he recorded that album, but sawed it up. But that was, you can hear the songs like, Running with the Devil and You Really Got Me. The tone's actually a little thicker on those if you notice. It's just that guitar had a lot more bite to it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Jay, I don't know if you wanna hang with us through the rest of it. I don't want to keep you. I know you're on vacation.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to chime in and say what's up and kind of give my 2 cents of an overview. But I'll let y'all do the track by track on your own.
All right, brother.
Thanks for hanging with us.
Enjoy your time.
All right. So, I mean, it's good for him to pop in like that.
That was very nice.
There's some interesting things, Dave, that I read about the way that he got that sound. It wasn't just a cranked up Marshall. Yeah. There was a lot of tinkering that happened with that Marshall to get that sag feel. Mm-hmm. He wanted to get that lower voltage run through the amplifier, and I think he ended up destroying about 1 million amplifiers trying to get that sound.
I think he tore up a few.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and he went through a lot of tubes because the way he does that, I think, and Scott would be Scott Swan would be a good guy to ask this, but I think using the Variac, which is what you're getting to, I think it does. Really stretches your tubes out. Yeah.
You hear
Yeah. It sounds like you're listening to Van Halen upstairs.
If you hear a bowling alley upstairs, it's just my 4 children running around like crazy. Because right now well, never mind. That's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
My
Tell
wife,
on yourself.
My wife may or may not be home right now. So anyways, if you hear the bowling alley, that's just them probably bowling with their younger brother.
Right.
But I'll tell you this, guitar players out there, if you're interested at all in that sound, that Van Halen sound, you need to visit Splon.com. Splon guitars, amplifiers. I mean, dude, that's what the whole design is built around.
Right.
Now it does more than that. That's why this is out. We have everything's intentional.
It's a foot switcher.
So, Dave, let's get into it, man.
Okay.
We got opening track. The first thing the world hears of Van Halen.
Those
first
car
album,
horns.
first track.
Yeah, the car horns.
And arguably the nastiest song on the whole record.
Yeah. And he's using the Ibanez because he does that little pick scrape behind the
behind the bridge.
Yeah, which you can really hear that, but and then it just launches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mercy. So with this song, I think you get simplicity. It's not but it grooves and it kind of moves. It has that low.
It's got that. Yeah.
And it's just right there.
It's kind of a fist pumper.
The bass does nothing else. He just
an easy job.
That's right, man. And Alex is phenomenal.
Yep.
And he sounds great. But I think the big takeaway from this, as is going to be the rest of the record, is that you're going to abandon kind of that conventional way of riff writing. So if you think of like the way most of the riffs that you're accustomed to hearing are going to start with this like. Like kind of this low, boom, boom. Think about all the riffs, they're just like, that kind of thing. Van Halen had this whole different concept of riff writing where it really wasn't, it wasn't crutching on E like everything else does. It's a very unique riffs, and this is one of them, obviously.
I think that comes a lot. I would probably assume from his piano playing, because that's what he I think he initially learned, and that probably helped him in a lot of ways to think differently about guitar and not just play the low notes and then where he's playing riffs but with multiple notes in the riff.
Yeah.
And you hear that with he lets the bass carry the low part and as he gets into the song.
Yep, and I think one thing that's really interesting to think. So this record came out in 1978. I think you've got to reckon that most bands, right, when they put their debut out, there's a progression that happens. Like, man, if you go back and listen to the Stones' early records, the Beatles' early records, Pink Floyd's early records, they don't sound the same as their prime records.
Right.
This band was not that way.
No, I think all their records. I mean, you can have a favorite, but I mean, if you think about the Roth era from Van Halen 1 to 1984. They all sound good.
Oh, and but
I mean, you can have a favorite, but they're all consistently good.
And their skill level is all there the whole time.
Right.
So like, jeez. So when you hear "Running with the Devil" with David Lee Roth's voice, and in that way he just goes bananas on that thing. It's like, think about Steven Tyler on the first album. He doesn't sound like Steven Tyler on Pump.
Pump, right?
That's not the.
It's a little nasally.
Right. It doesn't sound like the same. The guy that we know. So this is not the case.
Right.
It's like this album, they came out firing, and I'll go ahead and say this has to be in the running for the greatest debut album.
Oh yeah. Well, it's certified diamond, so that automatically gives it credibility for that. Yeah.
So moving on from Running with the Devil.
Yeah.
Here it is, folks. I mean, this has got to be the trademark stamp of the album, Eruption. Now, I don't really know what you even want to say about Eruption, but rock guitar was never the same.
Maybe the best thing to say is maybe Where Were You? That's a where were you song, and I know exactly where I was. I was in my room in my mom's apartment, and I was probably listening to 99.7 The Fox, and I heard and I knew who Van Halen was. I mean, I'd heard Jump, but I hadn't heard Eruption, and drums kick in, a big A chord, whatever, and then Eddie's doing his pentatonic runs there, but when it gets to that tapping part, I mean, I'm already mesmerized when I'm listening to him play because everything's so fast. And then he gets to the tapping part, and I didn't know. I wanted to be a guitar player, but I wasn't at that point. I'm like, what is he? Is that a keyboard? You know, and I think there's been other people that the first time I heard they weren't really sure. It was like, what is? It sounds like somebody's doing something on a keyboard because I heard jump again, and it kind of reminded me of that, you know, the keyboard solo that he does in that song, and I was blown away. I was like, what is this? And so I'd wait until I, you know, they maybe would tell you the next night if it was coming on, and I would record it.
Oh yeah,
that was the way I would get it until I could get the cassette. But it just that was a song that just.
What do you think? Can we get a little example of it?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm going to play it.
Exactly. Just that one little tapping part.
Right? Yeah.
Just a little tap, but show them what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's he's doing the. Something like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It was a little rusty, but yeah, that.
No, but that's it. That's it.
Yeah, and you had that little bit of delay and reverb in there.
And when you've never heard that before,
it was like a spaceship alien something going on. Like,
there's a reason. Happening? There's a reason Marty McFly put Van Halen on his dad's headset and said, "I am."
Oh, I love that scene.
That's great. All right, so that leads us into this Kinks cover, right?
Yes.
And the Kinks cover is pretty much that. It's a heavier, more energized version of the Kinks, and back then, you know, a lot of people had a cover on their albums, you know.
Yeah, and again, they were playing bars, and I think from what I can tell, what I read is that they were when they recorded, they just kind of took their show from playing bars and wherever, and just incorporated that onto the album, and so you really got me. Which is it's slamming.
Oh, it's slamming.
It's way better than the Kinks version.
Oh yeah, and you have the nasty solo in that.
Oh yeah.
It's just a wonderful solo.
And he's using that Ibanez because he does that little pickup, you know, where he turns the front pickup off, and he's like,
yep,
does a little
kill switch.
The kill switch thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
So going from You Really Got Me. Now, You Really Got Me Now was actually the single on the record.
Yes.
And I don't think it necessarily, at the time, performed really well.
Probably, I don't think it did.
And I don't think the record at the time actually performed really well. I don't think it even top 10 anything.
I don't think so.
But, I mean, once people caught on to Van Halen, it really does play out like a greatest hits album. Yeah. So it's kind of like everyone just jumped on it later. Mm-hmm. I don't think at the time. And which, to be honest, it's probably going to be the case when you break ground on something.
Yes, and back then, you know, bands really the way they were releasing an album and they needed to tour. Mm-hmm. I mean, they could play locally, but I'm sure getting on a Sabbath tour, whoever else they played, you know, open for, that's what really gave them credibility. You know, they went to England, and so you start making your stamp. You know, it's not really that way anymore. But 70s, 80s, and even in the 90s, you know, you got out there and. So people heard you, and then they'd go to the record store and buy your album because they came to see Black Sabbath. And they were like, "Who's this band?" It was like Metallica opening for Ozzy.
Yeah, you
know, it gave them so much exposure. So you're looking for that exposure, and I think once that happened, then they, you know, just started catching on. And then, you know, if you listen to any, there's some YouTube clips of them playing in England. I probably opened it for Sabbath, but there's like board mixes or whatever from this album, and I mean they are. It sounds like the record.
Yeah.
It sounds like the record.
They were on it.
They were on it. Right.
And there's a brief moment when I can't remember if they were opening for Kiss or if they were opening for Sabbath. It was one of those early tours that they co-opened with Montrose.
Oh wow!
Which is oddly enough, the lead singer Sammy Hagar from Montrose became the lead singer for Van Halen after Diamond Dave left. Moving on, you're moving to the to probably the most identifiable riff on the album, I would say.
The easiest song to play on the album.
Yeah, unless you're a 15-year-old Caleb and you learn how to play it. Let me get the guitar up here where you can see it. So when I learned to play this riff, I had no idea how to see Van Halen. Their internet wasn't out. I've told this story already on the riffs, on the top 10 riffs.
Yeah.
But it was I played it like this, just by ear. It's the same notes.
It's the hard way.
But it wasn't until a few years ago that I saw him play it, and I saw him going. And I was like, dadgummit, that's so much easier that way. All that work I had to go through as a kid to learn that. Great song. It's one of my favorites on the record.
I think I remember reading that Eddie said that he was sort of ashamed of the song. I mean, he didn't write the lyrics, but just the simplicity of it. Yeah, and I think it ended up being probably their biggest hit off that album.
Yeah, I mean that's the one. That's one of the go-tos.
Yeah.
Now this next one is my favorite one on the album. I think right now it is, anyways.
I think it's mine too.
I'm the one.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Remember, our rule on the show is we don't discuss before the show, so everything has to be real and spontaneous. So I didn't know that was the case. With
Yeah. It's just that swing and the speed that he's playing it, trying to play it. I don't know if it's humanly possible for anyone to really replicate exactly how Eddie's playing that. I think it's in his wrist, it's in his feel. But that song, I think you might get the feel of it as a guitar player. I'm speaking as guitar players, but then you really try to play it up to speed like he is. It's not as easy.
No,
it's not that easy.
And I think what's awesome, if you go and listen to the bass and the drums, so there's not a lot moving there, right? It's like so they're not shuffling, but for some reason that song feels like a shuffle, and it's because
of Eddie.
Of Eddie's rhythm.
His rhythm.
It just makes it, it's got that whole bounce that we've talked about. That's just it is Eddie.
Yeah, and again, it's an example of him being incredibly underrated as a rhythm player. And I think everybody probably says that now because I think people realize how great his rhythm playing truly is. I actually prefer that over his soloing.
I would agree. Actually, I would agree with you.
Because it's more interesting to me.
I think this song is his best guitar work on the whole record, though.
I would agree. Yes.
I'm including the guitar solo.
Yeah.
I'm including Eruption. I think this is the best guitar song on the whole record.
I'm with you.
He lets it fly, guys. If you don't know this song, I'm the One. Go listen to it and listen. The dude lets it rip. Right. I mean the whole song.
Then they get their little breakdown. Their little ba
All right, let's talk about that for a second. Let's take a little detour.
Okay.
David Lee Roth.
Yes.
And we take this. We don't have to be long here. I just want to say this. People give David Lee Roth a lot of flack. Like he's kind of like the Lars Ulrich of singers, right? Like people hate on Lars Ulrich. Why would you hate on Lars Ulrich? If Lars Ulrich played drums for The Who, people would think he was the greatest drummer in the whole world. Yeah. Doing the exact same things Lars Ulrich is doing for Metallica if he did it for The Who. If David Lee Roth sang for anybody, I mean, you pick your poison. If he sang for Deep Purple, if he sang for, Grand Funk Railroad, like we would love David Lee Roth as a singer, not as a personality.
Yeah.
So everybody's like, oh, he's just got so much flair that it hides his bad singing. I say hogwash. I say David Lee Roth is a fine, fantastic singer. And I think in any other scenario, David Lee Roth would be considered a boss. But because Sammy Hagar became a member of Van Halen.
Yeah, there was a comparison.
But who's going to stand up next to Sammy Hagar? I mean, really.
Well, and I think that over time, so when being a little older, when Metallica came out, I mean, up until really after the Black Album, I mean, and not to get on the Metallica thing, but Lars was like the drummer.
Yeah.
There were other guys, but nobody thought Lars was terrible. Maybe some virtuoso drummer out there did, but same with Roth. I don't remember people saying that Roth was a bad singer. I think that came about when Roth got back with them and realized he's not that good anymore. He was never great. He was really good. He was good at what he did. Yeah. And so I think we have the people look and go, well, I've looked at that live recording from '84 and he sounds a little rough there. It's like, man, he's on cocaine probably.
I mean, give the guy a break. He had a problem. All right, so let's keep going. We got Janie's Crying as the next track.
Yeah.
And this feels like a single too.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that a lot on rock radio. It's kind of an the guitar playing is really, it's kind of an interesting riff, I guess you would call it.
Everything seems low on this. I don't know why. I don't think it's tuned any lower than anything else, but it seems low.
Yeah.
Do 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 wow, no. It just, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's been sampled a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was. And even the opening drum fills just kind of. It's kind of. Those sound good.
Yeah.
They sound really good.
Yeah.
And he's got that guitar.
Alex is an underrated drummer.
Very much underrated. Yes. Yeah. We have a friend who doesn't like Alex Van Halen.
We do.
Nathan, yeah.
He doesn't like Alex Van Halen?
He doesn't really like Alex.
These people, people who watch know Nathan. We've talked about Nathan almost weekly.
Really? Okay. Yeah, Nathan's weird. I mean, who doesn't like Alex Van Halen?
I didn't know. I mean, listen, if anybody didn't, it would be Nathan.
Yeah. I would expect that he wouldn't like it. But yeah, I mean,
we're going to have Nathan on the show.
The way he's
going to have to defend himself against Alex Van Halen.
His snare drum, I mean, when you hear it, it's like, that's Alex Van Halen.
Was this electronic drums on this record?
No. That wasn't until 84.
84? Okay.
Yeah. And even then, it sounded good.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. The snare was still normal, though, right?
Yeah, still normal snare, right?
Yeah. All right, so now another, you're going to find that maybe the ones I lean more heavily towards are some of these non-singles.
Yes.
Like this next one.
Atomic Punk.
The Atomic freaking Punk.
Got that Phase 90 on, doing a little scratchy scratch on the guitar.
Dude.
Oh, man. That's,
I am the big... And here, I'm curious.
Yes.
The lyrics. Do you think they were doing their take on Iron Man?
Maybe. I've never really delved
into, you know, like the Atomic Punk, the
right.
Iron Man, like
there was, you know, I think Roth. We probably don't give him enough credit. We're kind of here defending Roth tonight. I don't think we give him enough credit for how clever he really is. He's a sharp cat, and you know, I think sometimes he gets lost in his little shtick that he's sort of known for. But there's a method to his craziness or goofiness or whatever. He's it's a little bit of a veneer, and you know, so you get a song like Atomic Punk, and some of the others we'll talk about. There's something there.
Yeah,
there's a little deeper, you know, for Van Halen.
For Van Halen,
yeah.
By the way, Van Halen is never going to be.
There's no Pink Floyd.
They'll never be confused with thinking man's music.
No,
all right? This is not the conceptual, deep thinking rock. You know, no.
Yeah. They're not going to do a rock opera.
No, there's
no concept album from Van Halen.
He said it. They'll never be confused with Pink Floyd.
No.
Ever.
No.
Yeah. But having said that, not everybody is. And this was more about Eddie.
Eddie. Right.
This band was more about Eddie, which oddly enough was not the leader of the band.
No, you had the talent, Eddie Van Halen.
Yep.
And then you had, you know, the brains.
And Dave.
And I believe I read in Sammy Hagar's book that he realized when he joined Van Halen that he was in charge.
Yeah.
And because before he was there, David Lee Roth was in charge.
But he didn't know that going in.
He didn't know that going in. It was like, oh, they need a leader. And then, of course, that all changed in the mid-'90s. They got a different manager, and so things changed it. But he was, when Sammy came in, he was like, okay, I guess I'm the leader of this band. They need a leader. So that was what Roth did.
He said they were more inclined to sit around and cook hot dogs in the microwave.
Yeah. He was like, they were like animals. Yeah, they'd slitch, you know, and microwave a hot dog. Let's get back to recording.
Yeah. So, next track. You got this riff for us?
Which one is it?
Feel Your Love Tonight?
I don't know if I
know. Okay, never mind. Was that another one you were playing earlier?
No. But...
What a riff.
Yeah.
Man, yeah. So, Feel Your Love Tonight.
Yeah.
And you still have these breakdowns. All this, and this is a good example of when to talk about the backing vocals.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And unlike other bands, the lead singer does not do all of the backing vocal overdubs. We're talking about Michael Anthony here. So this is a good time to bring up Brother Anthony.
Brother Anthony, yes.
All those high-pitched vocals.
Yes. I think that, you know, and I heard that when they got back together and they had Eddie's son, Wolfgang, that they tracked Michael Anthony's, you know, vocals in there, from meaning that they pulled them from live shows or you know, albums, and everything was probably set up on a click or whatever. But I don't know if that's true or not. But I have heard some clips, and it's like, oh, that sounds just like Michael Anthony.
Yeah.
You know, because you know, say what you want about his bass playing, it's not probably hard to be a bass player of Van Halen, but but those background vocals are really, I mean, it's part of the
part of-
sound.
yeah,
It's part of the
absolutely
sound.
it is.
It's as much the Marshall of what, Eddie's dimed Marshall, Michael's, backgrounds.
And it's not just high. There's a tone.
There's a tone to
Yeah,
it.
Michael
right.
Anthony had a very
It's a
specific tone.
Specific tone, right.
Yeah, and you know
Absolutely.
it. As soon as you hear it, you're like, yep, that's Van
him.
Halen.
Yep, that's him.
If you could mute the guitar and still know it was Van Halen just because of those backing vocals.
Uh-huh.
And they're a good example in there. This might be the track of the album. I know I've said that already, but Little Dreamer,
Little Dreamer.
that's the tone of the album. Let's
Right.
just stay there. But maybe it's not the track, then. That's the ultimate tone on the
I
record.
would say so, yeah.
Give us a little hit.
All right. No pick, but we'll make it
I
work.
got you a pick right here.
See if I can play it right. See, I didn't play it right.
Let me talk about your car when you were headed for the sky. But you were young and bold, and now changing the way.
I don't know. I hadn't played it in forever.
What a song, though, man! That's one of my favorites on the
Yeah.
record. Little Dreamer was kind of a darker,
It is dark. I haven't really thought about how dark it is, but yeah.
darker, heavier song.
Yeah.
And then we go from this kind of like Little Dreamer. You go from this weird song into this like, okay, so back in the day, sidebar here, everybody had one blues on their record.
Oh, yeah.
It
You
was,
had
it
to.
was just it was kind of a formula. You put a slow song on the record, you put a blues on the record. And this was the Van Halen version of blues, and I mean, you may not listen to it and go, oh yeah, that's the blues.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sound like blues, but
Which I think is Roth playing.
is it really?
Yeah, he's playing an opening guitar.
Well, I'm usually passing by just about 11 o'clock. I'll never stop. It's just such cornball, man.
Oh, it's
God.
so cornball.
It's cornball. But then the thing that this is made to replicate kicks in, and you don't care how corny it is.
Right.
Because it sounds amazing.
Yes.
This is a JHS Angry Charlie, and Charlie meaning Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown meaning Brown sound. Brown sound meaning Eddie Van Halen sound,
Right.
which is a sagged amplifier, a Marshall amp with
Specifically
lower
Marshall.
voltage to
Right.
it, yeah. And that's what, I mean, when he kicks in with that, this song is just,
It's
Rock City.
It launches, yeah.
it's not a blues, really. It's a 12-bar blues in theory, but it's just anything but that. They couldn't help it.
No, they could.
They can't play the blues.
And it's really one of my favorite solos he does too, because it's he kind of has that unorthodox thing. I remember him saying that the jump solo was like falling down a flight of steps and landing on your feet.
Yeah.
which I thought was a pretty good way for him to describe himself.
Yeah.
Ice Cream Man's a little more. There's some gymnastics in there, but it's something I can follow along with. There's something I don't know.
It doesn't ever seem like anything is really thoroughly thought out, and I know that it is, but that's kind of the spontaneity sound of his playing.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like anything's really established and firm. It's like I may get to the end of this line, and I may not. Like
You being the musician guy and understanding, I always feel like Eddie's not his. Like most of us play, if we play solos, we play on the beats. We're kind of playing with with the rhythm. Eddie feels like he's playing out of rhythm. Like he feels like he's just this sporadic stuff. As great of a rhythm player he is, and I know that he's meaning to do what he's doing, but it's for me it's hard to follow his solo, like to try to learn one, because trying to get the timing of it, and there's almost no rhyme or reason to what he's doing a lot of times.
I've thought before that it seems like he could have played the solo free from the band, and then they just superimpose it over a track.
Yeah.
Like it's nothing, like I could just sit down and just play something, like something practice, regardless of what the band is playing, and then later they could put my solo on top of the band track, and that sounds like Van Halen.
Yeah, which they didn't do, but that's what it sounds like they have done. It's hard to follow along with that.
And Ice Cream Man is kind of a wonderful example of that, falling down the stairs kind of thing.
and he
It
brings
sounds
it
a
back.
lot like Jump. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, which is wild. And I love the fact they put a blues on the first album.
Yeah.
It's still in the late 70s when that was, like I said, that was
the deal, right?
All right, so then you move on to this last track, which is probably the most...
It's heavy.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. It's probably the heaviest song on the record.
Playing those low fifths, I think, maybe at the...
Fire!
Yeah.
There's some Deep Purple moments on this record.
There is.
There's some real Purple moments.
Sounds like that's what he's doing.
I think you're right. And vocally, David Lee Roth reminds me a lot of Ian Gillan on this track.
Oh, yeah, I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
It really does. Yeah.
It reminds me of something, Sweet Child in Time or something like that might be.
And the solo when he after Roth does those fire and Eddie just does that little, he plays that lick, just walks it up.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That is good stuff.
That's pretty good, yeah.
This is a tough song. On Fire is a tough song.
Yeah.
Like, you're right though. That's the heaviest one on the record.
It might be considered heavy metal for that era.
Oh, for that era, I would say almost anything.
It might
here.
be heavy metal now.
Because heavy metal wasn't even a thing, was it?
No, just you had Sabbath, Deep Purple.
I mean, you had
a little bit of Zap.
You had heavy bands. You had like Cactus and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know that was Cactus considered heavy metal?
Well, but the thing is, nobody was getting that sound though.
That's what I mean.
That's what made it heavy, was that he had this Marshall dimed out, but he put that Variac on there, so it just made it I call it spongy. Mm-hmm. It makes the amp really spongy sounding, and that's what made it heavy. And how many people were all of a sudden were replicating that?
Oh yeah,
and having their Marshalls hot rodded.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true. Overall, I would have to say this album. We're gonna have to talk about this because it would be amazing to try to do this. And actually, this needs to be another episode where we try to do the top 5 debut albums of all time.
Yeah,
because
this was going on there.
Oh man, this is gonna be hard not to rank up in the very tip tops of the debut records for people.
Yeah,
it may be. It may be my favorite Van Halen record. I'm not sure. I kind of like.
It's tough because then
Mean Streets.
Yeah.
Fair Warning.
Fair Warning. Yeah. Fair Warning. But I would say top to bottom, this is a better album.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Song wise,
I think the tone's better on Fair Warning.
Fair Warning. And there's some songs on Fair Warning that are just. There's 3-4 songs on there that are just incredible songs.
Yeah.
That carry the ones that are kind of but yeah, I would. Overall, I think top to bottom, it's probably their best record.
Yeah,
song wise.
I know 84 gets a lot of
84, but the only thing about 84 is it's short.
Yeah, and I think 84 they borderline crossed over into like fusion territory.
A little bit.
Like it was not just that rock and roll ballsy Van Halen thing. It was a little more complex.
yeah, I would go that route. And just a side note, when they did on 84, when they did Hot for Teacher, he played a Flying V, a Gibson Flying V. And that, to me, that sound sounds a little bit more, because he's playing a Gibson, sounds a little bit more like the first album.
Yeah.
I hear that tone in there. But
that's awesome.
But yeah,
well,
great album.
Overall, I would have to say, if you're not familiar with the entire record, then you should be. Not a few songs on the record, the entire record. Mm-hmm. In particular, you need to go listen to I'm the One. You need to go listen to Little Dreamer and On Fire.
On Fire, yeah.
Maybe Atomic Punk too.
And then you can listen to all the rest of them.
And then listen to the rest of them.
Enjoy those too.
That's right. It's the whole record's like 40 minutes long.
Yeah, and there's not a bad song.
There's no jamming. It's song. So yeah, I would have to say, fantastic album, one of the greatest debuts of all time. Listen to it if you haven't. Davey Road.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me today, pal. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. Awesome.
And we'll do this again soon.
Do it again.
Shall we go out with something?
What do you want to do?
Well, you play Eruption, and I'll play Hot for Teacher at the same time.
Okay.
I'm gonna play Hot for Teacher, and you're gonna play, but just do the picking part on Eruption. Ready? You ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. I was really hoping we'd beat that. Hey y'all, thanks for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. See you next time.